Texas, Representative Noga Bauer, and of course, Mr. Speaker, very pleased to be here on the floor this evening with our colleagues and my classmate, Representative Pierce from New Mexico, and Judge John Carter from Texas, and you'll hear soon from another classmate of ours from Iowa, Representative Steve King, and of course, a new member, but a very experienced one, Tim Walberg from Michigan. It's an honor to be with them, Mr. Speaker, tonight, because this is a time really of victory for our men and women who are the patriots fighting this war in the Middle East. It's not a time for bragging, and we're not here to stick our finger in the eye of the Democrats and say, you know, you were wrong all along, and finally, after 107 days, you have admitted you were wrong, and we have won this argument. Actually, Mr. Speaker, it's been a tremendous loss for the country to go 107 days or whatever it is from the time the President asked for the money that the Department of Defense has requested to continue to conduct this war for the rest of this fiscal year, 2007, the $100 billion, with no strings attached, Mr. Speaker. The Commander-in-Chief and the combatant commanders in the field and General Petraeus brought us a new way forward. It's what the American people wanted. It's what the Congress wanted. And our combatant commanders responded to that. And we put in place the highest ranking four-star general on the ground in Iraq, General David Petraeus, who wrote the manual 6 months before on counterterrorism, and knew and knows. And it wasn't just his plan, but it was a plan that was worked out in combination with the Iraqi government, with Prime Minister Maliki, and it called for all of the things that essentially all of the things that the Iraqi study group asked for. That report, Mr. Speaker, was a bipartisan report chaired by two very distinguished political public servants, Honorable Jim Baker, a Republican, Honorable Lee Hamilton, long-term member from Indiana, Democrat, and this is exactly what the President tried to do, and yet the Democrats wanted to insist on these benchmarks that weren't really performance benchmarks, but they included a timetable, a timeline for giving up. No matter what the circumstances on the ground were, and the worst and most egregious of those, my colleagues, was to say that in August 2008, just a little more than a year from now, that no matter what was happening in Iraq, even when we've got like Andrew Jackson had the British running down the Mississippi to the Gulf of Mexico, as the song goes, even if we were in that situation, winning this battle in August of 2008, this Democratic majority wanted to blow the whistle and bring the troops home. And I'm telling you, at this particular time, as we approach the Memorial Day weekend, what kind of message does that send to those who have given the last full measure of devotion in this war and in any war, while the Democratic majority tries to get the last full ounce of political blood on the floor of this House? It is shameful, Mr. Speaker and my colleagues. We have every one of us have gone to some funerals in our districts. And I stand here tonight and I think about the Sailors family, Paul, their son, 22 years old, from Bremen, Georgia. I think about young Justin Johnson, another 22-year-old from Armurchie, Georgia, up in Floyd County. I think about the former president of the student body at my alma mater, the Georgia Institute of Technology, who 2 years after serving as student body president of that great institution, that first lieutenant gave his life in Iraq, shot down by a sniper leading his troops. I think about Command Master Sergeant Eric Cook, who served 30 years in the military, multiple deployments at the tip of the spear, And Christmas Eve 2003, my first trip to Iraq, one day after I met him and gave him some books and school supplies for the Iraqi children, he promised to deliver them, but unfortunately he took that right seat in a Humvee so one of his troops could stay home and call his wife and his family and talk to his loved ones on Christmas Eve. And Command Master Sergeant Eric Cook gave his life that evening when that Humvee went over an improvised explosive device. In the history of this country, we're about to honor those who have given their lives on Memorial Day, the last Monday in May. And if at that time, we think about, I think about, and I want my colleagues to think about, go back to World War I when Dr. McCrae wrote that poem in Flanders Fields. And I'm not going to try to quote the poem, although it's a very short poem, but the last stanza basically says, don't forget us. Just don't forget us. Don't forget we fought the battle, whatever the cause. You may not agree with it, but don't forget us. And I think that's why we felt so strong. I commend this president for vetoing bad bills that would forget the troops and would let them die in vain. So it's an honor to be here tonight to say thank you maybe to the Democratic majority for finally coming to your senses and letting the combatant commanders and Commander-in-Chief fight the war. Certainly we can talk about policy and we can talk about funding, but not with strings attached. Let's give victory a chance. And I think we have an absolute chance, as my colleagues pointed out, and some of the progress is being made. The news media, of course, they don't report good news. Good news is an oxymoron, isn't it? So they don't talk about that. But thank you, colleagues, for letting me come with you tonight and talk about this. And I know if the troops are watching over in Iraq and Afghanistan, they're thinking they're very proud that the Congress is supporting them, and we're not going to pull the rug out from under them. And with that, I want to yield back to my colleague from Texas, Ms.